It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
You know, here's the fourth sort of secret that I think millionaires or very successful folks have figured out is that they understand how to use rejection and loss as rocket fuel. And I think that's so powerful because whenever you think about rejection and loss, I always think in the lives of a lot of folks, that's the end point. That's the thing that kind of derails them, that stops them. Those who decide that they're going to be successful, they're going to push through it, don't allow that to be the finish line. They allow that to be the thing that becomes the wind in their sails to continue to move them towards financial success.
Well, it is one of those things, and I love, because Daniel kind of ran with this, because we're going to do our own personal experience shares on it, but Daniel couldn't help himself. He was like, man, I know there's famous people that have also had rejection, and this shows how don't let somebody else write your story.
Yep.
Guys, you need to be the lead person in your story of life, because if you're counting on others to tell you where you're supposed to end up, they don't have the vision. And
That's
here's
right.
some perfect examples. One of my, I probably should put him at the top of the list, because if you come for the studio tour, you'll see I have memorabilia. There's even a space that I left for him, but Walt Disney, it's hard to believe that he was actually fired because he supposedly had a lack of imagination.
And had no good ideas. I would say that I think he had some good ideas.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd say that one or two of his ideas panned out pretty okay for him.
I mean, and then Stephen King. Stephen King, Carrie. Now, what I think is sad is when Daniel was showing me, he's like, I'm not as familiar with that book. And I was like, well, that was that scary movie where,
I remember the movie.
There's a scene that everybody knows.
That traumatizes you forever.
Yeah. but that book, or novel, we'll make it fancy and call it a novel, was rejected by 30 publishers, and he almost gave up on writing. I mean, that's kind of unbelievable.
Now, I've never written a book before and tried to pitch it to a publisher. I can't imagine what the first rejection felt like, and then the second, and then the third, and then the 28th, and the 29th, and then you keep going. That's unbelievable.
Well, and that leads to the third one, because this ties in nicely. I think this is a nice bookend closing on it, is Oprah Winfrey. Mm-hmm. Because I told the story when we were talking about Oprah, and it's not in this story, but she grew up really poor, single mother, and she was fired from a co-anchor position because the quote was unfit for television. And here's what Oprah, because I'm old enough that I was actually during Oprah's just
top tier,
tier, where every household was trying to get home early enough to watch Oprah. And she's made so many star builders with Dr. Phil and so forth. But here's what I think is so interesting about Oprah. She says from a young age, she just knew, she had this spark inside of her that she just knew she was going to be successful. She completely believed in herself and just knew it was not if, it was when she actually reached her peak potential. And I think that's the powerful thing, is that how do you use rejection as rocket fuel? First of all, you got to believe it, guys.
Yep.
You got to believe. And that's what, when I look at my own life, I didn't get into UGA's business program. I got accepted when I applied to University of Georgia. I applied as a business major. Well, that school's a little harder to get into. They didn't let Brian into the business school. Now, what I think is interesting is my wife got into the business school.
We always
early.
know you married way up. We always know
But
you married way up.
I got into the art school because that was the school they did accept me on, and then we crossed paths. She went art, and then I eventually my sophomore year got accepted into the business school. I was also told be careful what you let in your head from others, especially when it's criticism. Is I had a boss at a firm. We dealt with big, super successful billionaire type people.
Sure.
They told me I was too country, too unsophisticated sounding, too Southern probably. I mean, based upon the things that were told, to be around some of the more sophisticated clients. I mean, if I would have, I didn't take that. I think you guys like the folksiness and the approachability of how we teach. That's why we do connect with people of all wealth levels, because I don't think that was a fair criticism. That was somebody kind of putting their limitations on me, and I wasn't having it.
And I would say, how valuable was it for you to recognize that just because that was his opinion, that was not true for you? Because can you imagine, what if Brian Preston at that age just said, oh man, maybe I am, my draw, it does not lend itself well to speaking a lot. Maybe I should never speak in public. Maybe I should never do a podcast. Maybe I should never do a live YouTube show. Think about how had you not used that to be rocket fuel that created this entire enterprise, how much different the world would be because you did not let that inform what was true to you. I think that's a perfect example of letting it be rocket fuel, not the wall that stops you from continuing to move ahead.
So let that spark that's inside of you, fuel it, let it continue to build so that hopefully eventually the light escapes and your talent and your purpose actually gets out there and you can use that rejection as the rocket fuel that makes that possible. So now I want to transition from that mindset to kind of talk about some actionable things that you need to be doing that will create the ultimate success. And that led to number 5.